SEALs right now out of Thailand.
Rescue teams are working through the night to save 12 boys and their coach trapped inside a cave.
The monsoon had come early. The conditions in the cave were impossible. There was a very strong feeling that the children couldn't be still alive.
We need expert cave divers out here.
The Thai Navy SEALs put everything they had into it, but only this group of people who do it as a weekend hobby has those skills.
I was thinking, this has actually got our name all over it.
You couldn't see your hand in front of your face. Trying to wriggle through holes that I couldn't wriggle through, finding a bigger space, sliding through, and then repeating again and again.
How many of you? 13?
We look into each other's faces thinking we may be the only ones that ever see them.
Finding the boys was the easy part. They didn't have a clue how to get those kids out.
We didn't think it was possible to dive the children out. We came up with the actual logistical plan.
I told him that's a horrible idea. And then Rick said, what if it's the only idea?
We were brutally honest. We promised multiple fatalities.
It's about controlling your emotions and your fear. Panic is death in the cave.
My mind was on overdrive. Oh my God, am I going to be good enough? If they die, it's going to tear me apart.
If you don't dive, everyone will die.
I told the guys, this is a one-way trip. Once you start, you cannot stop.
Believe. Believe.
Well, hello, E-Hills. If you're in the room watching online, my name's Tom. I'm one of the pastors here. And I've watched that film so many times in preparation for today. I've cried so many times watching that movie. I still kind of get choked up even watching the trailer. But we're going to get into the series, God in the Movies, and we're going to dive straight into, that's probably not the best. We're going to look at this movie. Rescue is it tells the kind of daring, the true life story of what happened in about 2018, a story that kind of gripped the world of the daring rescue of 12 boys and their coach from deep inside a flooded cave in northern Thailand. And what had happened was that the boys had gone into the cave after a soccer match, as they'd done many, many times before, but this time the monsoon rains came early and flooded out the chambers, forcing them deeper and deeper, so they became trapped in this cave system. Now, just to give you an idea of the scale of the cave, this graphic behind me that we're going to put up on the screen, it shows the length of just some of the cave, where they ended up finding the boys. It's not even to scale, but you can see there 4 kilometers deep from the entrance. That's 2.5 miles. I did a little measurement on Google Maps. That's like from here to the opposite end of the Aurora Reservoir by the wall there, underground, underwater, and under a mountain. At first, the Thai Navy SEALs were sent in, but the conditions were so dangerous and impossible that they just couldn't get very far into the caves, let alone find out if the kids were even alive. And, credit where credit's due. These guys were incredibly brave. They went in without regard for their own safety, and they really didn't have the necessary cave diving equipment, but they still went in regardless. In fact, in the first few days, sadly, one of those Thai Navy SEALs tragically died trying to find the boys in the cave system. And then after 6 or 7 days, people began to lose hope. The monsoon rains kept falling, and most assumed that there was just no ways that these kids could have survived. I mean, think about it. These boys were aged between 11 and 16 years old. My youngest boy is about to turn 11, and I can't even begin to imagine the fear and the trauma and the panic of my boy being stuck in a cave in the dark for 7 days without food, not knowing if anyone even knew they were there or were coming to rescue them. I mean, just take a moment. Can you imagine? Now, I want to press pause on this story for a bit. We're going to come back to it because it really is one of the most heroic, perilous, and extraordinary rescue missions in modern day times. But for now, I just want to pause a little bit and talk about why we're doing this series called God in the Movies. I mean, I've already been asked, maybe it's your first time, maybe you came, to Easter, now you're back checking us out, and you're asking, why are we talking about movies in church? Why are there stormtroopers running around in church? Aren't we supposed to be talking about the Bible? And of course, that's what we're going to do. But here's the thing. We believe in the power of a story. That there's something about a good story that is moving and attractive and inspirational that can speak deeply to our hearts. It's why the Hollywood box office generates over $10 billion a year. It's why we cry and we laugh when we watch a good film. And it's why there isn't a single culture in the world where parents don't tell stories to their kids. There's something about a powerful story that sticks with it, that helps us to learn. And here's the connection. We believe that God is the ultimate storyteller, right? It's why Jesus so often used stories or parables when he taught. It's why when the disciples asked Jesus in Matthew 13, hey, why do you tell stories? Jesus said this, he says, because it creates readiness in people's hearts. It nudges them towards receptive insight. It nudges them towards higher truths. You see, Jesus would look around when he was preaching or giving the Sermon on the Mount, and he would look around and he'd see what was happening around him, whether that was a person sowing seeds or farming or a fig tree, whatever it was. And he would use these kind of metaphors, these ideas, these stories to highlight some universal truth about God or about life. It was something real. It was something tangible that made sense to the listeners of the day. And so that, in a sense, is why we do a series like God in the Movies, to identify the truth, God's truth, biblical truth, in the stories that we see around us, to find God all around us, and sometimes to find God in the most unexpected places. You with me? Okay, so let's get back to the film that we're looking at today called The Rescue. And before we do that, without kind of trivializing what these boys went through, here's the question that I want to ask you today. What cave do you find yourself in? Hopefully it's not as traumatic or desperate as the situation that these 13 people found themselves in, but the reality is, for all of us in our lives, if we're honest, at some point we will find ourselves in a dark place. Perhaps it's crippling depression or anxiety, perhaps a divorce or a relational tension or breakdown you can't seem to figure out. Perhaps it's an addiction or a sin that holds you captive, trapped in the dark. And maybe you're not in a cave right now. Maybe life's going great for you. Still pay attention, because at some point you will find yourself in a difficult spot, because that's just how life works, right? In the scriptures, there are many, many accounts of biblical characters who that we find trapped or hiding in caves. From David hiding from Saul in the cave of Adullam, which is where he wrote most of his Psalms, to Elijah hiding in a cave running from the Queen Jezebel. But it's not just literal caves that we read in the scriptures. The writers also talk about metaphorical caves. Listen to the prophet Isaiah in Isaiah 42. He's describing the state of the nation of Israel. And just to give you context, at the time when he was writing to the people, they were in exile. They had been taken out of their homeland. They were broken. They were in despair. They'd been removed from what they knew. Things had not turned out the way they thought they would. Can anyone relate? They were suffering. They were in pain. And so Isaiah identifies with the people, and he says this. He says, but this is a people plundered and despoiled. All of them are trapped in caves, or are hidden away in prisons. They have become prey with none to deliver them, and a spoil with none to say, give them back. And so again, the question is, what cave do you find yourself in? What pain or disappointment do you carry with you? What keeps you up at night? What fears haunt your hearts? Maybe it feels like you're alone, that no one is coming to rescue you. Maybe if you're honest, you may be even asking God, where are you? Why aren't you hearing my prayers? You know, it's easy to endure a difficult season if we know that that season is coming to an end, right? if we can see the light at the end of the tunnel. But what if we don't know? Those kids didn't know if they'd ever get out, if someone would come to rescue them. And there's some in the room today and maybe watching online, and you're in that space and you're wondering, how long, Lord? How long is this going to keep going on? You say, God, I don't mind waiting. I just need to know that you're working, that something is happening, that I'm not going to stay in this situation or in this crisis or whatever it is, in this cave for too much longer, in the dark forever. And here's the thing, here's what I think this story can teach us about enduring our cave situations is this, that we who follow Jesus, we do not walk by sight, we walk by faith. Amen? You see, then the question becomes, will you keep waiting? Will you keep trusting even when it doesn't seem to be working? This is a question of faith. Will you believe that God is moving even when you are not? Now, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, so let's get back to the story, because I do believe that this story, a true story, can give us incredible insight into how not only we endure the cave seasons of our lives, those difficult or dark seasons, but also understand the way in which our God, our Heavenly Father, seeks to rescue us and uses us to rescue others. Are you ready? We're going to look at this first clip, so take a look.
It has been 7 days since this team of 12 Thai boys and their football coach has been missing in this vast cave complex.
Water levels in the cave have been rising, going up overnight by 6 inches every hour.
High water levels have made the search very challenging, but divers use huge pumps to reduce some of that water.
ถ้ำหลวงเนี่ยมันไม่ใช่แค่อยู่ในถ้ำการทำงานทั้งหมดเนี่ยมันเหมือนกับนิ้วอ่ะมาช่วยกันทำงานซีลก็คือนิ้วหนึ่งอย่างง่ายๆเลยทหารผมกัน 2,000 คนประชาชนหมอจิตอาสา
Now, volunteers have been traveling to northern Thailand to help with the rescue operation.
This has become really a worldwide rescue effort.
Volunteers from Europe, Australia, Asia, and the U.S.
Now, this part of the story may seem insignificant, but this is actually one of the most remarkable parts of the story, is that this wasn't just about the Thai Navy or the British, Australian, or European cave divers. This was, in fact, when you go look at the story, an entire army of civilians and volunteers who came from around the world to do whatever they could. And when it was all over, they estimated that a total of 5,000 people participated in this rescue mission. 5,000. Johnny mentioned we had over 5,000 people attending our Easter services, which is incredible, and we're so grateful to God. But imagine if every single one of those people flew around the world to help rescue those 12 boys. That was the scale of this operation. There were people making food for the volunteers, for the divers. There were people carrying supplies, people digging, people putting up tented cities. There were engineers who figured out ways to divert the water to try and slow the rising water. And that was a whole an engineering feat on its own. My point is that this rescue mission was far from a story of a couple of heroes. It was a story about our shared humanity of the international community that united to save these kids. It's about the power of community when we come together to solve problems together. And that is my first point, that God uses community to rescue us. You see, climbing out of your cave, out of your addiction, out of your depression, whatever that looks like for you, whatever darkness you may be in, let me say this, it is never a solo mission. And the Christian life is not an individual sport. It's a team sport. I've heard people say over the years to me, well, you don't have to go to church to be a Christian. And I'm like, yeah, of course not. That's obvious. Going to church doesn't make you a Christian, just like standing in your garage doesn't make you a car, okay? But imagine using that same argument for other things in the scriptures. Oh, well, forgiving people doesn't make me a Christian, so I'm not going to do that. Oh, well, loving my enemies doesn't make me a Christian, so I'm not going to bother with that. Ultimately, there's only one thing that makes us a Christian. That's our belief in and relationship with Jesus Christ, right? Our salvation isn't dependent on our church attendance, thank God. But that doesn't mean that being part of a church community or attending a church service is irrelevant. We do it because God tells us it's a good thing to do. And if a good and loving Father tells us that this is something that is healthy for us, then it must be healthy for us. It must mean that we're in some way wired for community and for connection, right? And so while going to church might not make you a Christian, it can certainly help you to be a better one. We say around here, JMLB, Jesus makes life better. I'm going to add something to that. CMYB, church makes you better. Okay? The point is, whatever you're going through, let me say this, don't do it alone. Don't do it alone. Especially in our Western kind of culture, we're so individualized that often when we're struggling, we tend to retreat to ourselves. We don't want to tell people the struggles we're facing. But whatever you're going through, don't do it alone. Maybe God is bringing people into your life to rescue you, to comfort you, to show you compassion, to speak truth to you, even if sometimes that truth may be painful to hear, right? And sadly, so often we miss the miracle of that. We're waiting for God to display his deliverance in some dramatic fashion, when actually it could just be a simple word from someone next to you, right? It's that old kind of, parable, I'm sure you've heard it before, where, there's a storm descending on the little town and the waters are rising and rising, and there's a guy standing on his, lawn, and the water's rushing past, and a guy comes past in a canoe and says, "Get in, dude, because, the water's going to rise." Yes? You know where this story's going? "Oh, no, God will save me," Okay. Now the water rises, of course, now he's on his balcony. The next guy comes past in a motorboat. "Get in, the dam's about to burst. If you don't get in, you're going to drown." "My Lord will save me." "Amen, brother." Of course, the waters rise. Now he's on the roof. A helicopter, comes through the clouds. Ladder gets dropped down. Soldier with a megaphone, "Grab hold of the ladder. This is your last chance." "Don't worry, brother. The Lord will save me. I have unwavering faith." Of course, the guy dies. Goes to heaven. Gets to meet God. "God, why didn't you save me? I had faith in you." And of course, God says, we know the story, "Hey, dude, what did you want from me? I sent 2 boats and a helicopter. Wake up." And I know it's cheesy, but it's true. And I believe that right now, God is bringing people into your life that you need and that need you. So don't miss it. Don't miss them. Don't think that you can do this on your own. Grab hold of that helping hand. Swallow your pride. See a counselor. Get help. Ask for help. Tell someone about that secret. Bring it out into the light. And if it's in your power, lend a helping hand. Get stuck in. Instead of complaining and criticizing, we're so good at that, right? Instead of complaining and criticizing, do something. Get involved, volunteer, give, serve, because we're all in this together. God uses community for his rescue plan. Now, next movie clip, next point. This one needs a little bit of a setup. You see, pretty early on, and especially because of the death of that Thai Navy SEAL, and I'm just saying, when I did the run through of the sermon, I said Navy SEAL, and someone said, "You have to say Thai Navy SEAL." I was like, you guys aren't the only ones with the Navy SEALs. Okay, anyway. But what they realized was that these guys, they didn't have the specialized cave diving equipment to pull this rescue off. And so in the end, the people best qualified for the job were actually these kind of, I don't know how to say it, random, pretty awkward people, to be honest. These guys who were like IT consultants and electricians during the week, but on the weekend were these cave diving enthusiasts. And so let me introduce you today to the world's most unlikely rescue team. Take a look.
It takes a peculiar type of person to be a cave diving explorer.
What makes someone want to be an explorer? I think it's 2 parts ego, 1 part curiosity, 1 part lack of confidence in yourself and the need to prove yourself. Maybe I was no good at footy and cricket, but at least I can, cave dive quite well.
I think it's fair to say all of us were not team players. None of us are very good with ball skills.
I was a loser.
I'm terrible at team sports. I think doesn't play well with others is a phrase that you're looking for.
I was quiet and shy and didn't like confrontation. I wasn't so sociable. I was bullied a bit as a teenager, yeah, because I was a little bit different.
I've got a lazy left eye, which when I was younger actually pointed in the wrong direction, which it's quite funny looking back on it, because it was quite a big part of my life at the time. Like, it was quite it's quite self-conscious about it, Kids are mean.
There's no question that in my younger years, I started off perhaps emotionally challenged.
Yeah, I wasn't the most social person. Bit of bullying at school and stuff, but the worst people I've blocked out of my mind. But once I get underground, that all disappears.
Can't see anything. Just my bubbles, isolated. This is a place where I kind of feel comfortable and feel like I feel safe.
Quiet and peace.
Get away from everything in normal society. Back to the age of the caveman.
It comes back to that kind of ability to expand your comfort zone. But probably some people's worst nightmares.
It's about controlling your emotions and your fear. Because panic is death in the cave.
How many feel claustrophobic right now? Okay. Woo. I mean, these guys, as you can see, they were uncommon people. I mean, a bit awkward, a bit nervous, kind of nerds, sort of outcasts. They were bullied. But here's my point. When it comes to God's rescue mission for humanity, God uses unlikely people. God uses unlikely people. People like Rick and John and me and you. Not just SEAL teams and professionals, but everyday, ordinary people. And so let me just say this. Don't think for a minute that God cannot use you. Right now, where you are. And you may feel unqualified, and you may feel like an imposter. I mean, I feel like that just about every time I get up on this stage. You may feel unworthy, but God specializes in using people just like that to fulfill His purposes. I mean, just read through the Bible, read through the scriptures. Noah was a drunkard. Abraham was an old man. Moses had a stutter. Rahab was a prostitute. David was a murderer. Matthew was a tax collector. I could go on and on and on. And yet, God used them. God can take our lives, the good and the bad, and somehow He is able to use it for His plan. Amen? I mean, these guys did this as a weekend hobby. I mean, it's crazy. And yet they were perfectly positioned, perfectly built for this rescue. They knew what it was like to be in the dark, underwater. They actually enjoyed it. I mean, the one guy says, caving is my safe place. I mean, are you nuts, dude? So here's the point. Could it be that the darkness, the pain that you've been through, the struggles that you've faced and overcome, could it be that it has all been preparation for the mission and for the purpose that God has called you to? Could it be? Because what I've found is that so often the people best equipped to help others walk through addiction, for example, are those who've walked through addiction. The best people to help counsel those who've lost a child are those who've lost a child, who understand the pain of that grief. That's why we have 12-step groups here and grief support groups, because here's the thing, God wants to use you for His grand rescue plan. You have everything you need to do what God has called you to do right now. And it's not just to save 13 lives, it's to save all of humanity back to Himself. And so maybe you're here today or you're watching online and you feel like, hey, I need rescue right now. Or maybe God is calling you to rescue others. And guess what? You don't have to fly halfway around the world to find people who are in need of rescue. Yes? I mean, I'm talking about your neighbors, I'm talking about your family members, I'm talking about your colleagues who sit next to you at work. And maybe all they need to be rescued, to be saved, is a simple invite to church, or a kind word, or a hug, or a meal delivered, or a phone call to say, hey, I've been thinking about you. Make no mistake, you have a specific set of skills. You have a circle of influence. You have gifts and abilities and a personality and history that has perfectly positioned you to do what God has called you to do. And so will you hear the call? Will you step up? Will you join him in his mission to bring healing and hope to a broken world? Final point, not the final clip, but the final point is this. God uses community. God uses unlikely people. And God never gives up. God never gives up. You see, there was a point in this story where the divers actually gave up, where it all just seemed completely hopeless. Take a look.
We essentially agreed that the conditions in the cave were impossible. The monsoon had come early, and it wasn't going to let up for many months. There was a very strong feeling that the children couldn't be still alive. It didn't seem possible. We lost hope.
This was day 8. Say day 8. You know what I've come to realize? When it comes to doing hard things, when it comes to climbing out of your own caves or helping others out of theirs, is that all of us eventually have a day 8. That day where we feel like it's just too much. I can't do this. I can't keep going. I don't have what it takes. Where we want to give up, where we lose all hope. And maybe that's exactly where you find yourself today. But I want to remind you, E-Hills, of this truth, that God never gives up on us. Even if we give up on him, he never gives up on us. He has not forgotten you. The Bible says he will never leave us nor forsake us. He knows your situation. He knows where you are, and he will stop at nothing to find you and rescue you. There is, in fact, no cave too deep and no darkness too great that he cannot rescue you from. Amen? And I've seen him do it. I've seen him do it in my own life, in my own marriage, in my own 1,000 times, and in the lives of others. And so I really want to encourage you, do not lose hope. Do not give up. Now, thankfully, these divers resolved to keep trying. Day 9. Day 10. Can you imagine? 10 days, these small boys were in that cave without food, without light, not knowing what was happening. But then on day 10, say day 10. Then on day 10, John, one of the lead divers, he describes, he had this, what he calls a powerful feeling to keep pushing on deeper into the cave. Now, I mean, you can take that as you want. I mean, from my perspective, I don't know if John is a Christian or not, but I'm absolutely convinced that that was the Spirit of God, the Holy Spirit, whispering to him, prompting him to keep going. And this is what happened next.
I was getting quite keen to turn round because I was way beyond any sensible air margin. Rule number 1, use 1/3 of your air on the way in, 1/3 on the way out, and you keep 1/3 for spare. But I just had this powerful feeling that it was time to push. It was the right time to push. So we continue upstream trying to follow the flow.
It was instantaneous, a pungent smell. Silence.
We both assumed we were smelling decomposing bodies. There's something unpleasant here. And then suddenly I saw a light flash.
John immediately got out the camera.
Yeah, best you can. Thank you. How many of you? 13. Brilliant.
Believe. On the audio, there's me saying, believe. That was me trying to tell me this is real. This is actually happening.
Go inside. No, not today. Not today. You have to die. We are coming. It's okay.
Okay, we'll see you soon.
As we left, pretty much all of them came and hugged us individually.
I made them a promise that I would come back.
I am really happy.
We are happy too.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
So where you come from?
England, UK.
Oh.
As we went round the corner and kitted up, total silence between me and John, just a look into each other's faces, thinking we may be the only ones that ever see them. That was a distinct possibility. The whole journey back, all I was thinking was, what on earth are we going to do now?
I'm not crying, you're crying. Believe. Believe. The boys had been found. There was a massive celebration that rippled around the world. The problem was that finding the boys was the easy part. No one had a clue how to get them out. Earlier in the rescue operation, they'd come across 4 cave workers and they'd try to get them out with oxygen bottles and dive masks, but it was a complete disaster. The men had struggled and nearly drowned, panicking underwater, and that had been a 30-second underwater swim. These kids were more than 3 hours worth of cave diving away from the entrance. There's just no way. Options included waiting out the monsoon season, sending in food and supplies for a possible 8 months, and hoping that the cave wouldn't completely flood. Another option they considered was actually drilling a tunnel from the top down to get them out. Elon Musk even got involved, but this proved impossible. They were literally under a mountain. But then Rick, one of the divers, thought of an idea, and he contacted one of his cave diving friends, Richard Harris in Australia, who was also an anesthetist. And I know that I say it funny, okay, but I told the guys, they told me that's not how you say anesthetist, and I said, you're wrong, okay. So the doctor who puts people to sleep, you know what I mean? Okay, we're on the same page. So Rick, now you get it. Oh, and the nishi or whatever you guys say. But he asked Rick, is it possible to anesthetize those kids and dive them out? And Richard, the anesthetist, said, no way, it's not possible. In fact, his exact words were, I could think of 100 ways a child could die very quickly. For example, if the mask leaked even a little bit, the kids, remember they would be sedated, they would simply swallow the water and drown. If their heads fell forward and obstructed their airway at any point during this 3-hour dive, they would die. It just didn't seem, it wasn't an option until it was the only option. Everyone said it couldn't be done, but Rick was determined. What if it could? He said this, he says, if we dive, some may die, but if we don't dive, everyone will die. And so they decided to do it. The air in the cave was running dangerously low. The water levels were still rising. The monsoon was looming and the clock was ticking. Day 11, day 12, this had never been done before. Day 13, day 14, the logistics were immense. Day 15, day 16, the Thai Navy pulled back. There was a disagreement whether they thought this was possible or even ethical. And now the responsibility lay squarely on the shoulders of these cave diving hobbyists. Body bags were prepared for the children. The divers even had an escape plan to the airport in case all the children died and the locals turned on them. Finally, everything was ready. Day 17. Say day 17. I mean, that's nearly 3 weeks after these boys had entered the cave. And just a little side note, if you find yourself in a dark place right now, how many of you know God's timing is not always our timing? I mean, He may not get you out on the day you wanted, but He will get you out. This is known as the Stockdale paradox, the ability to face the brutal facts of today without ever losing hope for the future. And I believe I'm speaking to someone here today. You see, here's the thing. On day 17, they did it. They did it. And I don't want to give the whole story away because I want you to go watch this film. But they did it. It took more than 3 days. But they eventually got all 12 of those boys and their coach out completely unharmed. Hey, I mean, isn't that incredible? That happened years ago, but we can still clap. As one cave diver reflected, he said this, make no mistake, this rescue was nothing short of putting a man on the moon. It was literally a miracle. In fact, those words got used a lot in the media over the next couple of days and weeks. Miracle upon miracle upon miracle, they said. Check out this last clip.
Mission Impossible เนี่ยกลายเป็น Mission Possible ไปได้นะ
Beklager, må nesten ha et hjerte av stein for å ikke la seg påvirke.
Even though we were the sort of spearheads of this operation, there were hundreds and hundreds of people in that cave.
เรามีคนมาช่วยเหลือไม่ว่าจะเป็นต่างชาติต่างภาษาต่างวัฒนธรรมเราทำงานร่วมกันได้อาจจะมีขัดแย้งกันบ้างแต่ท้ายที่สุดแล้วขอเพียงมีใจที่เป็นจิตอาสาแล้วครับแล้วก็มีทักษะที่เรารวบรวมกันขึ้นมาก็จะประสบผลสำเร็จ
I sensed that the lady opposite me was Titan's mother, the youngest boy that I'd brought out on that last day.
Titan's mom said on behalf of all of the parents, I want to thank you for what you've done. It's like our children have died and been given another life, and you know.
Thank you so much. ขอบคุณครับขอบคุณครับขอบคุณครับขอบคุณครับขอบคุณครับ
Miracle piled upon miracle.
I think I hold a sort of great pride in what we did. You could say justification for the dedication I put forward into a ridiculous minority sport that no one ever took seriously.
Yes, it's definitely changed my life. It made me into maybe a more confident person.
Last to be chosen for the cricket team, first to be chosen for the cave rescue.
What I did used to worry was I a bit too cold? Was I a bit too unemotional? I found a use and a purpose to that level of detachment. you can use it to do good things.
แอมก็ถามว่าเธอคุยอะไรกับวิลเลียมริกก็บอกว่า he said you need to marry Am
And they did get married. Miracle upon miracle upon miracle. Can you believe it? And you know what the crazy part about the story is? Just a few days after that rescue, that cave became completely submerged underwater. And it was 8 months before the cave became accessible again. I'm telling you, God uses community. God uses unlikely people. And God, our God, never gives up. And you may feel like today you're in an impossible situation, but nothing is impossible for Him. He has been called the Hound of Heaven, the one who never stops searching for us. And right now, there is an all-out search. And so let me close by reading to you from Isaiah chapter 43. Remember, we started by reading Isaiah chapter 42, where he describes the people of Israel trapped in caves. But look what he says just one chapter later. And I must be honest, when I read this for the first time, preparing for today, it took my breath away. And in the end, this is really the message that I believe God has laid on my heart to tell you, E-Hills, today. And that is Isaiah 43. It says this: do not fear, for I have redeemed you. I have summoned you by name. You are mine. When you pass through the waters, those kids pass through waters, I will be with you. And when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. In the Message translation, it puts it like this: don't be afraid. I've redeemed you. I've called your name. You're mine. And when you're in over your head, I will be there with you. When you're in rough waters, you will not go down. And when you're between a rock and a hard place, it won't be a dead end. Why? Because God says, I am God, your personal God, Holy One of Israel, your Savior, and I paid a huge price for you. You see, friends, this is what the whole message is about today. The huge price that God paid for you and for me is Jesus Christ. It's Jesus Christ. And when all is said and done, Jesus Christ is the great rescuer. Amen? You see, He was and still is God's rescue plan for humanity. And this movie may be good, and this story may be remarkable and inspiring, but it is merely a glimpse of who our God is, the rescuer God. So that we don't have to stay trapped in caves anymore, trapped in cycles of sin or depression or anxiety or anger or anything else that would rob us of the life that Jesus gave His life for. The scriptures are clear. Jesus says, I've come to set the captives free. And He was the most unlikely hero of all. We spoke about this last week on Easter, that Jesus didn't have an army. He wasn't a professional. He was born in a manger and came riding in on a donkey. But God used Him. And when the disciples said it was impossible, thought it was all over, went back to fishing, guess what? On the third day, Jesus walked out of the tomb. Do you get it? Do you get it? Jesus came out of the cave. Jesus came out of darkness and death to rescue us and to redeem us and to give us life. And maybe it feels like this season has knocked the wind out of you and you're gasping for air. Maybe it feels like you need supernatural CPR. But I want to encourage you, God is not finished with you yet. He never gives up. And right now, I believe He's breathing life and air into your lungs and beating your heart with His fist and saying, believe, believe. I'm coming and I will get you out.